Hi, hello. I hope you're in fine voice. What have I learnt in my decades doing voiceovers and being in broadcasting and being an announcer and so on? What have I learnt over that time? Well, I thought it would be quite a good idea to just impart some information, the things that I've learned personally, and see if you can learn something from that. So I started as an announcer on camera and also as a voiceover for my local TV channel way back in 1982. And when I started, what I wanted to do was sound like the people I admired, particularly the voices that I admired. And they tended to be rich, warm, mellifluous kind of voices. So very bassy, in that baritone, hello, good evening, I hope you're doing well today, that kind of thing. Of course, I'm not like that. I'm not rich and deep and bassy, and they were usually from the southeast of England and had an RP, received pronunciation voice, so they said laugh and staff and bath. But I would say, naturally, laugh and staff and bath, because I'm from the East Midlands. So I did my best to imitate them, and that was a bad thing. It was a bad thing because occasionally I hear stuff that people have cruelly uploaded to YouTube, and I hear that stuff from those early days, from the kind of early 80s. And I just think I can almost go through the motions of what I was thinking at the time, which was I'm trying to be like somebody else, trying to be another voice, trying to be a voice actor. But of course, it's not really about that. It's about being yourself. As cliched as that is, it's about discovering your own voice. And that way, you'll be comfortable with it and you'll be able to do the work much more easily because you don't have to put on a voice. I would say that's kind of maybe my number one piece of advice is just learn what your voice sounds like and accept it for what it is. And then you use that as the instrument through which the words come across. Because voiceovers aren't really, as much as we like to think, they aren't really about you and your voice. They're about the words on the page and talking to your listener. That's the most important thing. You're not the most important thing at all. You're simply the messenger, the conduit through which the message arrives in the listener's ears. Be yourself, and learn to be yourself. It's quite hard when you start because you're using somebody else's words. But you'll find that comes with time and experience. The other thing I learned pretty quickly was you won't book every audition that you do. So the issue tends to be that when you get some work, you might get several bits of work in a row and you begin to convince yourself that actually you're probably the best thing since sliced bread, or that people really like your voice, and they're going to hire you. So every audition you do, even though at the back of your mind you know that there's competition out there, you think, this job's got my name on it. It's bound to go to me. I'm going to do this and get hired. But of course that isn't true. There are lots of other people out there competing for the same work, and you may be the best voice that the client has ever heard. But if you're not quite the right fit for that particular job, that particular project, you're not going to get hired. So it took me a while to realise that actually there's a huge subjective element to voiceovers. And that means that you're booked because someone obviously likes your voice, but likes the way you say words and thinks it's an appropriate delivery and style and tone and age range and so on for their particular job. Whether it's a commercial, it's an on-hold phone message, whether it's an audio book, whether it's a corporate read, whatever it happens to be, it's really the client's decision at the end of the day. That means that you're not going to book every audition that you do. And you've got to get over it. It's nothing personal. It's just, that's what happens. That's what the industry is like. And you can go through whole periods of time without booking any auditions at all, despite doing them, and doing fantastic ones. So concentrate on doing a compelling audition, concentrate on that bit, and then just forget about it. Send it off. Don't sit there waiting, thinking, well, they haven't emailed me and let me know if I've got the job or not. Just move on. And when you get that work, and sometimes it's work you didn't think you would get, when you get that work, great. That's a real bonus and a feather in your cap. But otherwise, do your audition, send it off, forget about it. Another thing I discovered, and this was probably round about 2007, 2008. So I've been doing it quite a long time, and things had changed and so on, and home recording came along. So I thought, well, I better get myself a microphone. And I did, and I got myself a cheap and cheerful USB mic, which was probably maybe not the best mic in the world, but I thought I'm just going to try it out. And lo and behold, I got some work with it. And I remember sending some work off to someone, and it was a studio actually, and a sound engineer who was running the studio up in the north west of England. And I sent it off to him, sent some comments, very nice comments back saying, I enjoyed the read and so on. He said, and can I ask you what microphone you're using? Because it sounds very good. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a Neumann U87 microphone, which in fact would be worth, a couple of £1,000? But my mic had cost me about 50 or 60 quid. So I wrote back to him and said, actually, it's a cheap and cheerful USB mic, because although I've been in studios a lot, I've only just started recording from home, even at this kind of late stage in my career. And then he suddenly wrote back and went, oh, yeah, no, I've listened again. I can tell it's actually not not an XLR, expensive, top-of-the-range professional mic. But I thought, well, it fooled him originally. And I think it was quite a good sound, because I had a lot of sound deadening around the microphone. So there was very little room echo. There was very little in the way of external noise. And I'd kept the noise floor really low, close mic'd and so on. And I think that had kind of fooled him in that sense. However, that said, you should get the best gear you can afford. But just to say that sometimes cheap gear gets through, and you don't need to spend an absolute fortune on getting yourself set up. And also there are many more choices nowadays. So just bear that in mind. Your cheap purchase may garner some results. One of the shocks in voiceovers is that clients are unpredictable. You can't legislate for them at all. And they just are capricious. They change their minds about things. They ask you to deliver something in a certain way. You do that. They send it back and they go, no, not like that. Do it differently. The vast majority are lovely. They are not nasty in any way. I don't think I've ever come across a really nasty client. But sometimes they expect something of you and they can't quite get it out of you. And sometimes they were expecting something different, which can happen as well. I did a director's session not so long ago, and it was all set up. We did it. It lasted about an hour. I sent all the stuff off. They were editing at their end, and the client had sat in. The client had actually sat in on the session, on the director's session, along with a sound engineer. And I'd recorded from home, sent it all off. They'd edited it, and they came back and said, it sounds really good. We love it. Very good. And I thought, great. Forget about that. And something in the back of my head said, don't throw the script away. And I didn't. So I kept it. And lo and behold, about a week later, they came back and said, actually, we've played it to our client. So they're a bit further up along the chain. And they don't like the delivery. Can you redo the whole thing? So then we had to go back and redo it. So there weren't any changes in the script, particularly, that I remember, but we had to redo the whole thing in a slightly different tone. So just bear in mind, clients change their minds, and often when you least expect it. And it's nothing personal to you or about you or your performance. It's just that they are customers at the end of the day. And you just can't rely on them in many ways to be consistent. And why should they? We all change our minds. And finally, what I would say is be kind to yourself. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Manage your expectations. Don't think you're going to be incredibly successful, and don't think you're going to be a failure. You probably, most of us, are somewhere in between. So it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's going to take time. Usually it does. And along the way, you've got to be nice to yourself. Just go easy on yourself, really. Do what you can do. Be as good as you can get. Be as professional as you can. If you feel you need a bit more training, do that. If you feel you might need to up your mic, do that. When things go right, that's easy. When they go wrong, it's not so easy. So try not to beat yourself up and just think, it's only voiceovers at the end of the day. Important to us, but let's face it, it's not brain surgery. So go easy on yourself, be nice to yourself, and you can't go far wrong. All right, thanks very much for watching today. Look after your voice, and I'll see you next time.